Hey everybody, welcome to episode 2. Our first question I'm very excited about. It is one of 3 questions that we have so far, so please keep sending them in. We're kind of condensing the similar ones, but keep them coming. So, first one was kind of directed at Nathan. Sorry, I'm using him as a footrest, don't mind me. How to talk about having a mental illness with somebody you are in a new relationship with. So, and I want to make sure that the person who asked this question gets the answers that they wanted. So basically, it's somebody like me trying to tell someone like you early on in the relationship about my mental illness.
Okay.
So what can that process look like so that you aren't getting overwhelmed or freaked out?
Sure. I'd have to say that, there are probably two big things that that can be done that would probably help out quite a bit. I think the first is to get a baseline of communication, right? Making sure that in the relationship, however many dates you're in, whatever your interaction is, you're already having, in-depth conversations, right?
Okay.
So that it's not this like just dump on of a well, we're having a conversation now. Does that make sense?
So maybe wait until you have been on enough dates that you can read when the person is comfortable or not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the other aspect of it is the sense of patience, right?
Okay.
And because so in the initial,
Sorry.
you're gonna make
Yeah. Go ahead.
All right.
Okay. Patience.
in the first few conversations, it's going to be awkward. It's going to be difficult. I mean, it's going to be hard for both sides, right?
Right.
So you have to have this sense of patience to not necessarily expect to have the whole conversation, the whole, kit and caboodle in one go, right? Because being on the outside, if we started this conversation and I got awkward or I got uncomfortable,
right,
I'm going to try and get out of this conversation, or my defense mechanisms are going to kick in. For me, it's humor, right? Okay. I make inappropriate comments. So and that goes back to having that baseline of communication. If you've had enough conversations to know what people's defense mechanisms are, because conversations in general are awkward. It's not hard to get someone to be a little defensive, even just talking about the weather. Well, maybe not the weather, but bring anything up, and most people will get a little defensive, and you can start picking up on those cues. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is being patient and having the ability to determine where that line is, or at least determine if you've crossed that line for the initial conversation, to pull back and regroup and try and have another conversation at a later time when you're both feeling a little more comfortable. Okay. Does that make sense?
Can I try to condense that?
Absolutely.
And you can tell me if I'm right or I'm wrong.
Absolutely.
Okay. I think what you're trying to say is, if I were going to tell you about my mental illness, we've been on a few dates, whatever, things are going well.
Yep.
That I should be willing to let you absorb that information in slow pieces and not expect to say, I have depression, here are my symptoms, and here's what you should do all in one conversation.
Yes.
Okay. And I should also expect that there's going to be a lot that you don't understand right away, and that I might have to be patient with you.
Absolutely.
Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes.
Okay. Keep going.
All right. I guess another just word of warning, maybe.
Okay.
At least for me.
Mhm.
My understanding was minimal at best. So, I said dumb things, right?
Okay.
I think you could probably even go out on a limb and say that some of them might have been a little inconsiderate. And not that I meant it.
Right.
Not that I meant for things to be offensive or inconsiderate or anything like that. It's just my ignorance and inexperience made me a bit dumb. So I said things. And you, being such the lovely lady that you are, just graciously took them and
oh, Lord, okay.
And I don't know, probably stored them for our 20th anniversary to drop on me. But I mean, you had that understanding that what I was saying was just ignorance. It wasn't that I was saying stupid things, and that was just what it was.
Okay. Can I do the condensed version?
Yes.
Again? Okay. So, again, correct me if I'm wrong. Yes. I know you will. So, if you are trying to tell someone about your mental health, beginning of a relationship, and they don't have a lot of experience with mental health already, they're probably going to have a lot of misconceptions. They're probably not going to word things in a way that are very appropriate. They might respond with humor or frustration or any array of things. So be prepared to be a little patient with them, and don't immediately assume that they're refusing to work on it or learn about it. Just be aware that you may get a reaction slightly different than one of a fully trained therapist.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
All right. Anything else? Nothing else about me talking with you about my mental health in the beginning was weird? Like, did I ever overwhelm you? Did I make things harder or easier to understand?
Yeah. So you did a really good job at limiting the amount of stuff we talked about, right? For us, we knew each other beforehand, so we had a lot of conversations. We knew how each other kind of ticked on just base level, right? So you knew when I was getting awkward and saying stupid things. But I think probably one of the best things that you did is you came up with an analogy to better explain things, because like you said, I didn't get it. You came in and I mean, you could have come to me and said, here's what it is, right? Depression. I have depression. Okay. Well, to me back then, I was of the mindset, well, I mean, everyone can have depression, and you you get up and you do something, you get over it, you find a way to get through it.
Mm-hmm.
And it just didn't click. It didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't make sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
But you came up with an analogy of, I believe something like diabetes, where, someone with diabetes is constantly taking insulin. And it's not there's no cure for it. It's just a constant maintenance.
Okay.
With that in mind, you explained, because that everybody gets that, right? Everybody,
Right. Okay.
But not everybody always remembers that diabetics take insulin because they have a chemical imbalance,
Mm-hmm.
and you talked about that, and then you said, well, depression is similar because it's a chemical imbalance. It's not you lie around and you're sedentary and you get depressed because you're not doing anything. It's a physical chemical imbalance.
Okay.
And I didn't know that. It didn't make sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
So having that, that something else that I could relate to, something else that I can understand a little bit easier.
Okay.
That is more commonplace, right?
Okay.
Like I said, everyone knows about diabetes, right?
Okay.
Everybody talks about diabetes. So it's something that is easier to understand, easier to talk about. And so kind of having that connection there and finding ways to overcome that communication barrier or understanding that is just in the way.
Okay. So if I'm you, no, that sounded weird. If I'm coming to you
Yes.
to tell you about my mental illness, what
Yes.
you're saying is that I should be prepared for you to not actually understand what that means, and if possible, have some like analogies or real life examples that make it easier to understand if you express that it's not making sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. Did I encompass everything? Because you talked for a long time and I feel like I didn't.
Well, you're very good at that. You take my ramblings and you make them short and concise and sentences that make sense.
I just wanted to make sure I got everything you were trying to say. Okay. So the person that initially asked that question, I think, was just looking at it from that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But I also, since we're here anyway, I want to hit maybe things that can make it easier if you are the person with the mental illness approaching it for the first time. Because that's, I'm not that you're unapproachable, but it's still really awkward.
Sure.
So I guess just a few pieces of advice, maybe, and you can agree or disagree if this would have been or was helpful for you, because a lot of these things I didn't do, I'm going to be honest. Maybe try to have that conversation before you are actually symptomatic. For example, if you have a panic disorder, maybe explain to the other person what that is, what it looks like, and what sets that off before just pretending everything is fine and then having a panic attack in front of them and they don't know what to do. Right? Preemptive conversation.
Like at a state fair?
Right. Exactly like at a state fair. Okay. So no matter what your illness is, I would say talk about it before they need to know. Because then when they need to know, you're prepared.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Personally, I don't know if a lot of you out there are the same, but okay, I do. A lot of you out there are the same because this is really common. It's really hard to bring up having a mental illness because you're afraid that they are going to reject you.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you're dating, you feel like that about every conversation you have about anything important, politics, religion, whatever.
it's hard not to with the stigmas. And,
Right. So there's a lot of stigma with
Mhm.
mental illness.
Mhm.
Nathan's learning to use my words. So I just wanted to kind of reassure you a little bit. I found some statistics that were really interesting. In 2013, there was a study that came out of the UK about pretty much this exact situation, talking to couples about how they managed one of them having a mental illness. And 77% of those couples, the mentally ill person actively made a decision to tell their partner.
Mhm.
So they had a conversation about it. They didn't wait to have a panic attack at the daycare. Not just panic attacks, though. I mean depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, bipolar, the whole anything that you struggle with. They decided to have a conversation about it up front, like actively discuss it. And out of all of those people that actively chose to discuss this with their new potential partner, only I think 4% of people said, "Whoa, I'm out."
Wow.
So that means if you're going to approach somebody and say, "Hey, we've been dating for a while, I just want to talk to you about this," the odds of them staying with you, not saying handling it well, I'm not saying that they're going to get it, but the odds of them not immediately leaving you are 96%. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So I really hope that helps you feel a little more comfortable. I realize numbers don't make it less awkward in the moment, but the odds are in your favor. And another thing about that study that I thought was really cool. So out of all those couples that had that active conversation, because we worry about overwhelming you.
Yeah.
We worry about freaking you out.
Mhm.
We worry about making you afraid of us.
Mhm.
Any and all of the above.
Yeah.
Plus some, I'm sure. 75% of the people who received that information, who learned that their partner had a mental illness, 75% of those people did not feel like their relationship was impacted negatively. It didn't faze them. They weren't worried. It didn't concern them. It didn't alarm them. It didn't scare them.
Yeah.
Not saying that they got it right away, but I mean, 75% didn't even have a problem with it. Not to mention that 96% of them stuck around.
Sure.
So those are some pretty impressive statistics.
Yeah.
Which I will put a link to that article at the bottom of this page. When I post the video, that way you can all check it. I don't just expect you to believe me.
I do.
You were weird. Okay, so anyway, I guess what I'm trying to say is, as scary as it is, most people are going to handle it a lot better than you think they will. What else would be good? So talk before you're symptomatic.
Yep.
Be prepared for some really awkward, weird, insensitive questions.
Yeah.
They may not want to have all of that conversation right away.
Yeah.
They might want to sit and hash it all out over the next 3 hours.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is be prepared for, they're going to ask you questions because if they don't understand, you might want to be prepared to explain things in a way that makes it more relatable to them, but also basically what I'm saying is don't be offended if they ask you things that would maybe normally sound offensive, because if they're actually taking the time to ask you, I promise they're trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of an example. So when Nathan and I were going through my depression for a long time, well, not for a long time, but at the beginning, we would talk about it, and you were like, I'm gonna just get up and go for a walk.
Yeah.
And it would be very easy for me to be offended in that situation.
Sure.
Obviously.
Well, and part of that, I think I would always start it. I read an article that all you have to do,
Right. Okay. So what I'm saying is they're going to have a lot of misconceptions.
Yes, absolutely.
They're going to have a lot of questions. So maybe be prepared for some of those. Don't feel attacked, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is easier said than done.
Yeah.
But if you're aware of that going in, it might make it a little easier on you.
Mm-hmm.
Mental health and new relationships.
What about bringing it up?
Okay. So I guess from my side of the situation, I would say, and again, this is me, this is not everybody. By no means are we experts. But I would wait until you're comfortable enough having other kinds of serious conversations with them. Because this is just as important.
Yeah.
So if you don't feel like you can talk to this person about your religious views or your political beliefs, you probably shouldn't be talking to them about your mental health, because if you don't trust them, that's not. It's a very vulnerable part of you. So, but also I would suggest not putting it off for that exact same reason, because it is a part of you, and if you want them to support you, obviously they have to know what's going on. They have to understand. So, kind of rambling at this point.
Yeah, I see that.
Rude.
How about I take over?
Yeah.
So.
Sure.
So I can ramble.
Yeah.
So.
For days.
I would say for bringing it up, one of the things that, from my perspective, from the outside looking in, as it may, I would want some form of kind of ease into that conversation, so that I can maybe prepare
Okay.
for it.
I see where you're going.
So for example, if Jenny were to reach out to me, and we had just started dating recently, and you felt comfortable with having this conversation, having you reach out to me and saying, hey, I'd like to have a personal conversation, make sure that somehow you make it so I don't think that you're breaking up with me, because that's immediately where I would go. But saying that you want to have a serious conversation, maybe some form of description of about mental health, or about you personally, that you just want to share, and because for me, I'm a very personal person.
Person.
Yes, a personal person. A wonderful personalities of persons. So, for me, if I'm going to have a personal conversation,
right,
with a friend, with a partner, with whomever, if I were going to talk about something about myself, I wouldn't necessarily want to do it in front of others. So trying to do this over coffee, if you suggested it over coffee, I might say, well, if it's personal, let's, meet somewhere a little more,
sure,
secluded, or more, what's the word I'm looking for? Private, thank you.
So, just so I understand, so if I don't already have some kind of indication about how you're going to react to that news, for example, if Nathan and I had just started dating, I'm a mental health social worker, or was, so he would know already that I'm probably going to be fine with him coming to me with something like that.
Yeah.
But if it were flipped and we had just started dating, you're in IT, you talk about going running, I would have no idea how you're going to react to that information. So I think if I'm understanding you correctly, is to be willing to approach that delicately and set time aside for a private conversation if that's
Yes.
what you need?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Instead of, maybe casually just bringing it up during dinner and hoping it goes well.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
Okay.
So.
Friendly reminder, these are all unscripted. Yay! So we're just kind of bumbling through.
Both.
Right. Okay.
You're bumbling, I'm rambling.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about
the question.
No, I mean we've talked jeez. We've talked about it from the perspective of approaching someone with your own mental illness.
Yep.
We've talked about it from the perspective of being approached.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's another side here that I'm missing, but my brain is kind of spinning.
Well, what about
so maybe we could flip the roles a little bit. Like,
okay.
I could tell you things that would be helpful for you to do while I'm telling you about this.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So, if you have no mental health experience, if this is all super overwhelming, you don't get how they're feeling, none of it makes sense, and they're coming to you with this information. My advice, I guess, and again, this is me personally, I would appreciate it, I guess, is maybe the right word, if you don't give unsolicited advice. So
you don't want me to WebMD this and tell you how to fix it.
Correct. So I don't want you to say, we'll just take medication, or, oh, well, I heard running helps with that, you should go running. I want you to listen to how I'm feeling, because let's be honest, I've been dealing with this for a really long time, and you have known about my condition for 5 minutes. So please don't get me wrong, advice is good, brainstorming is good.
Sure.
I love that you are concerned enough to offer those suggestions,
yeah.
I guess.
Yep.
But it can be very dismissive.
Sure.
It implies that the entire issue of my mental health can be taken care of with a pill. And so when it can't, or when I'm struggling, that makes it very hard to come to you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And it also makes it sound like it's this really easy thing to take care of and that I just haven't done it yet.
Yeah. Yep.
Which is false.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you can totally ask what are you doing to help manage that? I think that's a fair question.
Yeah.
I think that would be a great question.
Yeah. Side note, I didn't ask the great questions. I made the comments about an article that I read and all of the...
I really wasn't going to out you. I mean, I was going to let you just have I would ask that you be patient. It's very hard to talk about something that is generally viewed as very negative.
Sure.
I mean, that it's like that with everything, not just with mental health, but if somebody approaches you and is trying to discuss their mental illness with you, be patient. Let them ramble. Let them stumble a little bit. Let them maybe give you too many examples. I mean, for example, if I were to come to you and say I had schizophrenia, I would probably follow it up with, but not the kind that, and then list off a million news stories, because that's what the media has implied schizophrenia is.
Yes.
So I would say, let them get it all out. Don't interrupt them. Don't immediately assume that the things you see on the media are true, and then assign those traits to that person.
Absolutely. And to interrupt you. As a person that struggles with letting people get things out, one thing that I struggle with, and I think is an underlying issue with that, and someone not understanding and not having the experience of having to deal with mental illness and mental, understanding mental health, is, when you came to me and, we had the conversation about your depression, immediately I went full sympathy and I said, I'm sorry, what can I do? How can I fix it? Sympathy kicked in.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can give any advice, any unsolicited advice to anybody, because everything that I say is unsolicited.
Which is exactly what I just said not to do.
I don't listen.
This is a different situation.
Yes,
so it's okay.
Obviously, totally different. And hopefully it helps. Hopefully it helps either you or someone else that you know and that you can have a conversation with. Sympathy, in my mind, sympathy gets in the way of empathy. For me, I sympathize very easily. I can very quickly
feel bad for someone. Yes, you can.
But if you're feeling bad with someone, if you're feeling bad for someone, you're no longer listening and you're no longer trying to understand.
Okay.
You're just straight up like, what can I do? Instead of holding that back, not immediately going to that, I'm sorry, what can I do? Immediately like going blinders into sympathy. You can take a step back and start to empathize.
So what I think poor Nathan here has done, has gotten in over his head trying to explain the difference between sympathy and empathy, which, if that's a new concept for you, it's going to be kind of hard to grasp.
Still hard.
But fortunately, I know of a very good video that, it explains it beautifully. I've used it in another post before, but I will also post that at the bottom of this page. Yeah, that right down there. I should make a list of the things I'm supposed to be attaching so I don't forget. Anyways, yes, try to be empathetic, not sympathetic. If you don't know what that means, scroll down and watch the video and then return to this video.
Or finish this video and then watch that video. Like 12 times.
Right.
Yeah. Not that we're getting paid by this person at all. We are.
What?
Other YouTubers? I don't know. Anyways.
We're not getting paid at all. This is all completely unpaid. I don't know what you're talking about. Okay. Anything else that you feel important to add?
No. Just a quick reminder, this is unedited, unscripted, unknown.
Sorry, I'm trying to write things down and you're like...
As Jenny continues to ignore the camera and ignore our adoring fans in public, I will entertain.
Okay, so if we did not cover any aspect of talking about mental health in a new relationship that you want us to awkwardly fumble through on camera,
do it.
We will. Please let us know. I want to make sure if you get a question submitted that we answer it from the angle that you want. If you think like, oh, they took my question, but they totally didn't get what I was saying, please re-explain it, please. So I guess with that, we can probably pull it to a close for this episode. The next upcoming episodes we have lined up, we have one with a, I'm trying to say, we have an episode lined up where we're going to bring in a guest to talk with us. They are a recovering alcoholic, recently a year sober, so that's really great.
Absolutely.
Even though that sounded very sarcastic.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
We love you.
Oh my god. Okay, anyway. So they're going to talk about, how to handle addiction and treatment and sobriety in a relationship
Mhm.
and maintaining that sobriety.
Mhm.
Not that I couldn't pull up some articles and do some research and tell you about my work experience, but I think it would be much better also bringing in somebody who's actually doing it.
Yes. Yep.
You know, we want to normalize it as much as possible. So, we also have a video coming up about. I believe I'm trying to figure out how she phrased this question because I don't want to misinterpret it. She asked me if I ever have suicidal thoughts or tendencies and how we would address those as a couple, which is a super scary but super important question.
Absolutely.
So I'm not going to dive too far into that right now, but we are definitely going to hit that in one of the next videos.
Bit of a deeper, darker, harder.
Which means Nathan's going to make a lot of inappropriate comments.
I apologize.
But so those are just.
Speaking of comments and inappropriate comments, let us know what you think.
I forgot what I was going to say.
I know.
That's rude.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
But let us know. Tell us what we did right. Tell us what we did wrong. Tell us how to improve.
And please keep sending in questions.
Yes.
Like I said, the ones that are really similar, we're kind of trying to group together. That way we're not getting super repetitive on you guys. But, bringing up mental illness when you're dating somebody, addiction, suicide, I mean, we've already got a really wide range of stuff. And we are super happy to keep broadening that horizon.
Broadening, yes.
Okay. I'm just saying nothing is off limits, so please, please, please ask us, and we will discuss and look like idiots on camera just about anything. Did that sentence make sense?
No.
No, it didn't.